minor, C, D minor, and then try playing it over changes. Part 2, Shawn Lane over jazz. So today, just one pattern, I think, so we can focus on dominant 7. So let's go back to our 2-5 in C. D minor, G7, C. Before we get to more changes, let's stick with this, because I want to cover the dominant 7. So there's 2 ways we can use the dominant 7. So on the 1, you have these patterns we did last time, and then you could do the same pattern on the dominant 7s, which, you know, that's a little bit more advanced. So the starting point would be to just take the 1 and maybe just grab a few notes, and then when you get to the G7, now we can use the Shawn lick or the tritone. So let's start with the not tritone, just the basic G7, and you can do this in a lot of places, obviously, but let's take the straight ahead G7 off the 6th string and look at that area, because that will be, I'll write this all out. Now the technique we're using is the groups of 4. The picking is the easiest part. You pick the first note. Let me use a little G7 triad 7th chord here, which is just 6 with the pinky on the F, you know, and then a G, 3, 4, 5, D, B, G. I mean, we all, you know, if you play jazz, you definitely know that. So the way we do it is we pick the F with probably an upstroke, pull to the D, and then hammer from nowhere on the B, hammer from nowhere on the G. And then, so that gives us a nice grouping of 4. And then pick the second note down, the second note in the grouping, the D, hammer from nowhere on the B, hammer from nowhere on the G, pull off to F. So if you get real fast, I'm actually going down, up that time, or 2 ups. Doesn't really matter because there's so much space between the picking notes. For some reason, I'm choosing down, then up. And you can also just finger pick it. Just pick with your first finger. For some reason, that sounds a little better to me. But anyway, so let's go over the patterns we would use in G7. It's going to be G7 or G7-9. We're not worried about whichever is more convenient. You know what I mean? So based around this, example 1 will give us the patterns based around that chord. So we're going to start with the 9, actually. Pull off to the F, hammer from nowhere on the D, and there's the B. And then the second half, F, D, B, and then we can pull off to the A. So it gives us a nice, we're getting that A in there. That's our first grouping. And then we move to the one I just did. Then off the 3rd string, we go back to the G7-9. We start on the B, pull off to the A, hammer the F, hammer the D. So this is also a B minor 7 flat 5, but it's a G add 9, G7/9. And this pattern is used a lot in jazz. It just Art Tatum and Cannibal Adderley love this 9 arpeggio over the G. So Oscar Peterson, you know, played more in a some type of linear bebop fashion. But anyway, so we got that, and then the final one, we're moving up a little bit, a fret up, starting on the A, 7th fret, pull off to the F, hammer D, hammer from nowhere, pull the G. That one's a little stretchy. Now, why am I going up a fret, a couple frets like that, when we're coming off of this? The reason is because there's no, when you get down here, there's no real great G7 to use that pattern with. You know, there's the G7, but it's kind of hard to do that pattern. You could do an A minor 7, but I want to stay within the G7 tonality. So we got, or instead of starting with your pinky on the A, you could start with your second finger on the G. Pick the G, pull the F, hammer D, hammer B, pick the F, third. So instead of having to reach your pinky way up there, you just start on the G. And then we'd be headed to the C chord. So that's all based around this G7. So now the next one we'll do is based around this G7 chord, which is, I've done this one before. Starting on the D, 10th fret, pulling to the B, hammer G, hammer F, pick the B, hammer G, hammer F, pull the D. Now here, if we want to go to the second string, keep in mind you can skip groupings too and jump around. You can also go backwards. You know, you could be on this one and then jump up to this and then jump up to this. You could go in reverse. But anyway, so that's the first one. The second one will be starting on the G. You could do the A, but it gets a little stretchy. But I'm starting on the G, pull the F, pick the G, pull the F, hammer from nowhere D, hammer from nowhere B, and then pull off to the G. Or pull off to the A. But really to the G. That's the technique, is going down to the root. So we got, now on the third string, we're starting on the F, pick the F, pull to the D, hammer B, hammer G, pick the D7, hammer to the B, hammer to the G, pull to the F. So we just this, you know, we're following just a basic G7 arpeggio here. And like I said, you could skip, like if you could do the top one, skip this one, and then do this one, so they, you know, flow together kind of nicely, or backwards. Now starting from the fourth string, we have the G7/9 shape. Starting from the B, pull to the A, F, hammer from nowhere F, hammer from nowhere D, 10, pull the 7. Of course, that's also a B minor 7 flat 5. So all those together. Or skip the second one. And then that resolves nicely. We're right there. One more position, kind of based around like this G, you know, or this G, which is, so it's this position, but kind of an alternate root, if that makes sense. So we're starting with the same one we started in the beginning, but then instead of going to that, we're going to this. This is probably the best one. D, pull the B, pick the D, pull the B, A, hammer to nowhere A, hammer to nowhere F, pull to the D. That's the coolest sounding one. high to play it properly. You know, if I was in like D, it has a cool sound. Okay, so now we're gonna go pinky on the A, pull to the F, hammer from nowhere, D, hammer from nowhere, B, pull to the G. And the final thing, F, D, hammer from nowhere, B, hammer from nowhere, G, pull to F. So that's all the G7 stuff. D minor, D minor, C, D minor, notice there I ignored the D and just went right to G7. You can do that. Just on the C you want to resolve. Or you could play the D and then resolve to C. Or do all three. D, G7, on the C. All right, I'm kind of running into limitations of the acoustic strings here. All right, so that's easy enough. You practice it slow. You can bring the tempo down to 80 and just, you know, practice D, C, and then when you can do 16th notes, you can do two of the shapes, D, and so forth, or just practice it on your own, slowly building up speed until you can and then try playing it over changes. Pretty straightforward, just takes some work, and again it's very helpful if you relax and not try and play too much. So like I said, on the D, just play a chord, some type of chord riff, like play a D and go up 2 frets. That makes a nice D, or a D, and then set yourself up to play the G7 line. Now, on a 2/5, the most common substitution is the tritone. The tritone of G is easy. All tritones are just that. There's your root, you substitute it with that note right there. Or if you're playing a G here, the tritone is right, it's that shape. Now, another way to remember the tritone when you're playing jazz in the context of 2/5s is even easier. You have your 2 chord. The Tritone Sub is just 1 fret down. It's a 7 as well. So we're replacing G7 with D flat 7. And then down 1 more fret. So it's chromatic. So you get D, and then the D flat. So D flat. So since we're playing D flat, we can do the same thing with those arpeggios. So now we'd play D minor and then B flat 7 and resolve to C. You don't have to get all of them. You could just get one. D minor, a little slower, and then resolve to the major third of C. And I carried that over the bar into the C. C, D. I just fit it at the very end there. Let's try that again. Slower. So let's go over the D7 patterns. Starting down below here at D7. So we already explained these pretty well in G, but we're way down low here. And I should add, when you get them, start to get them down and are able to play, play the lines fairly easily, putting them over changes is still much harder. You get rolled over by the changes, so you have to take it really. It's something I'm still working on. But anyway, so there's our first. This will be written out in tab 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this position of D, kind of like the G, based on the D flat roots. We got 1. That's my favorite one. That's used quite a bit. Yeah, so this one has the 2 going back to this again, D flat. We could go down to the 9th fret 1, or up to the, now I'm just in the 9th fret D flat 7. So we're here doing the D flat 7 9. We could go down to the D flat major pent zone where that one lies, or from here go up to the D flat 7, based around the, and then that takes us to the D7/9, D flat 7/9 shape, and so it's the same shapes, just in D flat. So when you practice, if you're playing jazz, and you practice one key, G, however you practice it, then you can go and practice the tritone. So on the D7, D, G7, C, and then the patterns in C, like I said in the last video, are kind of all the E minor 7 patterns. They fit nicely over the C. A minor 7, A minor 7, E minor 7. Another thing too is when you have these shapes, you don't have to pull off to your 2nd finger like Shawn does, which is hard. It gets easier, but you can use your 1st finger and flip it down there. Now, real quick, theory on the tritone. So, on a G7, it's common to the scale that actually fits is G Lydian flat 7. So we get mixed Lydian, but with a sharp 4. G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F, flat 7, G. Okay, so that would also be the scale in D flat. D flat, E flat, F, G. See, by sharpening the 4, we're getting the G. And on the G, when we sharp the 4, we get the D flat. So that connects them like that. Now, both chords also share the tritone. So on the G, the tritone inside that chord is F, the flat 7, and B, the major 3rd. In D flat, the tritone is the same, but the notes are reversed. The F is the major 3rd now, and the B is the flat 7. That's why a lot of times in jazz, people just play little, tritone shapes, because that outlines the chord so nice. Or especially in blues. If you're in a G blues, you just play the G tritone. Then on the C, you just drop down 1. And then when it goes to D, you just go up 1 fret. That's the tritone inside the dominant 7 chord. So it also works out over G, there's a scale called the altered scale, which is G root, flat 9, A flat, sharp 9, B flat, then the major 3rd, then the sharp 4 or flat 5, sharp 5, E flat, and then the flat 7, F. resolved it to C. Now that scale, that G altered dominant scale, is the same notes as the D flat mixed Lydian flat 7 scale. So you could think, over the G7, you could be thinking of G altered dom, or you could be thinking of D flat, Lydian flat 7. But we're not, this isn't a scale thing, this is an arpeggio thing, so that's why you can think the D flat 7/9 arpeggio, and it's giving you notes from the G altered scale. Now the parent scale of D flat 7 in this mode of Lydian flat 7, that is a mode of A flat melodic minor. So G altered dom is the melodic minor 1 fret up. A flat minor major 7 is what it would be. It's A flat melodic minor. So that's confusing, because now on G7 you got A flat melodic minor, or you could think G7 altered dom, or D flat 7 Lydian flat 7. It's too much. So you just take it slow, and sometimes when you're actually playing changes and it comes to G7, you just think G7, or you think of G7/9. You might, or you hear it, you might hear it and play it, or you just think of the tritone. And occasionally, when it comes to G7, I think of A flat. A flat minor major 7, or melodic minor. It's just too much to think about. Every single 2/5 you have to have all these things. It gets to be a bit much, so you'd kind of slowly add, you use it more to practice, just to get your, and with some 2/5s you get to the point where you can actually see, when it goes to G7, you can quickly think of D flat, you can think of A flat minor, base the lines kind of around it. So you'd be thinking, now interestingly, if you think A flat minor, it's the tritone of the 2. So D minor 7 is the 2. And then the tritone of that, A flat melodic minor, fits the G7 altered. But like I said, too much. Pick shapes. Now, this is an A flat minor 6. Look at, it's the D7. Here's an A flat minor 6. It's just the D flat 7/9. So it's the same thing. So, there's not really a big point. It's good for practicing, but otherwise, I would just work on tritone. So, thinking D, and then C. Just basic shapes if you're just starting out. D, that's a D flat, Or use the actual Shawn shapes, but use them as melodic devices. D, D, D. You can use them slow. You don't have to do the hammers from nowhere. That's how to get, and there's a lot more you can do with this. Now, maybe not a lot more. There are limits, but you can create new shapes. Like, for example, on the D minor, I did this last time, but then sometimes I'll use this F arpeggio, like a little F chord with the G on top of it. Play the G, pull off the F, hammer C, hammer A. works well on major as well. So if I'm in E major, I just went down 1 fret. Major 7, the E. So it's just C sharp minor, but over the E. All right, I think that covers everything for tritone, for that one technique at least. And we'll be back for some more. Let me know if you have any questions. And that should all be in tab.